As the dishwasher at Bella Vita, my job was straightforward. Scrub the pots, rinse the plates, and stay out of the way. I was invisible, just another cog in the restaurant's well-oiled machine. But that all changed one fateful evening when Mr. Diego, our beleaguered owner, jokingly invited me to read over a supplier contract. It was a typical Friday night, and the kitchen was a whirlwind of activity. The chefs barked orders, the waitstaff darted between tables, and the scent of garlic and herbs filled the air. I was elbow-deep in suds, trying to keep up with the never-ending stack of dirty dishes. "Margot, can you believe this?" Mr. Diego's voice cut through the chaos. I looked up to see him waving a thick stack of papers in my direction. "These suppliers think they can pull one over on us. Here, take a look and tell me if it makes any sense." He chuckled, clearly not expecting me to take him seriously. I dried my hands on my apron and accepted the challenge, curiosity piqued. I wasn't just a dishwasher. I had a past that had equipped me with skills far beyond the kitchen. As I skimmed through the contract, I quickly noticed several clauses that seemed off. "Mr. Diego," I began cautiously, "there are some terms here that don't look right. For instance, this clause about delivery penalties could cost us a fortune if they delay shipments." Mr. Diego's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Really? Show me." I pointed to the relevant section, and he leaned in to read it, his expression growing more serious by the second. "I'll be damned," he muttered. "You're right." Just then, one of the suppliers, a slick-looking man named Raymond, sauntered over. He had overheard our conversation and was starting to look nervous. "Is there a problem with the contract, Diego?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Diego's eyes narrowed. "As a matter of fact, there is. Margot here just pointed out some discrepancies that we need to address." Raymond's smile faltered. "Discrepancies? I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be." I stepped in, feeling a surge of confidence. "It's not a misunderstanding, Mr. Raymond. This contract is heavily skewed in your favor, and it needs to be renegotiated." Raymond's face turned a shade paler. "We'll discuss this later," he said hastily, backing away. Diego watched him go, then turned to me with a new respect in his eyes. "Margot, how did you know to look for that? You're a dishwasher." I smiled, deciding it was time to share a bit of my story. "I haven't always been a dishwasher, Mr. Diego. I used to be involved in my family's business dealings. I've had my fair share of negotiating contracts." "Well, I'll be," Diego said, shaking his head. "You might have just saved us from a huge mistake. We need to discuss this further. But for now, let's get through tonight's dinner rush." The rest of the evening flew by in a blur. My mind was racing with the possibilities that had suddenly opened up. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was more than just a background character in the story of Bella Vita. I had a voice, and it was time to use it. Mr. Diego had always been a fixture at Bella Vita, the heart and soul of the restaurant. He was there before the first pot of coffee was brewed in the morning, and stayed until the last table was cleared at night. To many, he seemed invincible, a man who thrived on the chaos and demands of running a successful restaurant. But behind his determined exterior, Diego was crumbling under the weight of his responsibilities. Early one morning, before the kitchen staff arrived, I saw Mr. Diego sitting alone at a table, staring blankly at the contract I had reviewed the night before. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a weariness that seemed to permeate his very being. "Mr. Diego, are you all right?" I asked gently, approaching him with a cup of freshly brewed coffee. He looked up, startled, then gave me a tired smile. "Oh, Margot, I didn't hear you come in. Yeah, I'm fine. Just a lot on my mind." I sat down across from him, feeling an unexpected camaraderie. "Is there anything I can help with? Besides the contract, I mean." Diego sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "It's not just the contract. It's everything. Isabel, my wife, she's unhappy, and I can't blame her. I'm never home. When I leave in the morning, she's still asleep, and when I get back, she's already gone to bed. We barely see each other anymore." He paused, staring into his coffee cup as if it held the answers to all his problems. "Last night, we had a huge argument. She said she's tired of being alone, of feeling like she's not a priority. And she's right. But I don't know how to fix it. This restaurant, it's my life, but it's also tearing my life apart." I listened, feeling a pang of sympathy for him. "It sounds like you need a break, Mr. Diego. Maybe take some time off to be with Isabel, to reconnect." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A break? In this business, that's a luxury I can't afford. We're already stretched thin with Chris quitting and Jude's attitude. If I step away now, everything could fall apart." Just then, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and groaned. "Speak of the devil," he muttered, answering the call. "Hi, Isabel. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. I really am trying. No, I haven't forgotten about dinner tonight. I'll be there, I promise." He hung up, looking more defeated than ever. "Another broken promise," he said quietly. "She doesn't believe me anymore, and I don't blame her." I reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Maybe we can find a way to balance things out here so you can take some time for yourself and Isabel. You've got a team here that cares about this place as much as you do. Let us help." Diego looked at me, his eyes searching mine for sincerity. "You really think we can make it work?" I nodded. "I do. It won't be easy, but it's worth trying. For your sake, and for Isabel's." He took a deep breath, as if drawing strength from my words. "All right, Margaret. Let's see what we can do. But first, let's survive today's rush." The day was a whirlwind, but there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. Diego seemed more present, delegating tasks, and even taking a few moments to chat with the staff. It was a small step, but it felt like the beginning of something better. That evening, as the dinner rush finally began to taper off, I saw Diego glance at his watch. "Go home, Mr. Diego," I urged. "Isabel's waiting for you." He hesitated, then nodded. "You're right. Thanks, Margaret. I'll see you tomorrow." As he walked out the door, I couldn't help but feel hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, Diego could find a way to balance his two worlds. And in doing so, maybe we could save Bella Vita together. The weeks following our conversation were a blur of frenzied activity at Bella Vita. Mr. Diego made an effort to spend more time with Isabel, but the strain was evident. He was constantly torn between his responsibilities at the restaurant and his need to repair his marriage. The stress was palpable, and it was only a matter of time before something had to give. It all came to a head one Friday evening, the busiest night of the week. The kitchen was in overdrive, orders flying in faster than we could fill them. Jude, our head bartender, was slammed with drink orders and barely keeping up. The waitstaff was frazzled, and I was trying to manage the dishwashing station while helping out wherever I could. "Margaret, we need more clean glasses." Jude shouted over the din, frustration evident in his voice. "I can't keep serving drinks if I don't have glasses." "I'm working on it, Jude," I replied, my own patience wearing thin. "Just give me a minute." As I hustled to wash and dry the glasses, I saw Mr. Diego at the front of the house, trying to manage a particularly difficult customer who was complaining loudly about the wait time. He was doing his best to keep his cool, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. The night dragged on, and just when I thought things couldn't get worse, one of the chefs accidentally dropped a tray of entrees, sending food flying everywhere. The kitchen descended into chaos as we scrambled to clean up the mess and redo the orders. "Mr. Diego, we need you in the kitchen," one of the chefs called out. Diego hurried over, but he was barely able to contain his frustration. "What the hell happened here?" "It was an accident," the chef stammered. I lost my grip on the tray. Diego sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. We can't afford mistakes like this. We have customers waiting. As he tried to help sort out the mess, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. It was Isabel. Not now, he muttered, silencing the call. But the phone rang again almost immediately. Diego, you should answer that, I said quietly. It might be important. Reluctantly, he picked up the call. Isabel, I can't talk right now. No, I understand. Please, just give me a little more time. Isabel, don't. His face fell as the call abruptly ended. He stared at the phone, a look of utter defeat on his face. Jude, who had been watching the whole exchange, chose that moment to voice his own frustrations. This is ridiculous, Diego. We're all busting our asses here, and you're barely holding it together. Maybe if you actually managed this place instead of playing family therapist, we wouldn't be in this mess. Diego's eyes flashed with anger. Watch your tone, Jude. I'm doing the best I can. Well, your best isn't good enough. Jude shot back. Look around. This place is falling apart. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I stepped in, trying to defuse the situation. Jude, calm down. We're all under a lot of stress. But Jude was beyond calming down. No, Margot, this has gone on long enough. I'm done. I quit. He ripped off his apron and threw it on the bar, storming out of the restaurant without a backward glance. Diego watched him go, the weight of the evening's events crashing down on him. He looked around at the chaotic kitchen, the frazzled staff, and the angry customers, and I could see the fight drain out of him. I can't do this anymore, he said quietly, almost to himself. It's too much. I stepped closer, trying to offer some comfort. Diego, we can get through this. We just need to regroup and... But he shook his head, cutting me off. No, Margot. I've been fooling myself. I can't keep up this pace. I can't be everywhere at once. Something has to change. He turned and walked towards his office, leaving me standing in the midst of the chaos. As I watched him go, I realized that this was the breaking point. Diego couldn't keep carrying the weight of Bella Vita on his shoulders alone. If we were going to save the restaurant and his sanity, we needed a new plan, and fast. The rest of the night was a blur as we tried to recover from the evening's disasters. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the real work was just beginning. Diego needed help, and it was up to us to provide it, whether he was ready to accept it or not. The next morning, the restaurant was eerily quiet. The echoes of last night's chaos still lingered in the air, and everyone was on edge. Mr. Diego hadn't come in yet, and the staff was murmuring amongst themselves, uncertain of what the day would bring. I was in the dishwashing area, mechanically scrubbing pots and pans, when I heard a knock on the doorframe. I turned to see Lily, one of the waitresses, standing there with a concerned look on her face. Margot, do you have a minute? She asked. I wiped my hands on a towel and nodded. Sure, what's up? She stepped closer, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. It's Mr. Diego. He's really struggling, isn't he? I sighed, leaning against the sink. Yeah, he is. Last night was rough. Lily bit her lip, hesitating before speaking again. Do you think there's anything we can do to help him? I mean, he's always been there for us. Maybe it's time we step up for him. Her words struck a chord with me. Diego had indeed been a pillar of support for all of us, and now he was the one in need. You're right, Lily. We need to find a way to ease his burden. As we were talking, the door to the restaurant opened, and Diego walked in. He looked more tired than ever, but there was a determined set to his jaw. He walked straight to his office without acknowledging anyone. I knew then that it was time to take action. I needed to confront Diego and share my own story, in the hope that it might help him see things differently. I took a deep breath and headed towards his office, knocking lightly before entering. Mr. Diego, can we talk? I asked, stepping inside. He looked up from his desk, his eyes weary. Of course, Margaret. What is it? I sat down across from him, choosing my words carefully. Diego, I know things have been incredibly hard for you lately, and I know you're trying to juggle everything on your own. But you don't have to. He raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. And what do you suggest? I can't just abandon my responsibilities. I'm not saying you should, I replied gently. But you can delegate. You have a team here that's willing to help, if you let us. Diego leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. It's not that simple, Margaret. You know that. It is, I insisted. And maybe hearing my story will help you understand why. He looked at me, curiosity piqued. All right, I'm listening. I took a deep breath and began. Before I came here, I had a different life. I was a dancer, and for a while, I was living my dream. But then things went wrong. My family, they're diplomats. I was expected to follow in their footsteps, but I chose dance instead. It caused a lot of tension, and eventually, I left home to pursue my passion. Diego's expression softened as he listened. That must have been difficult. It was, I admitted. But it was nothing compared to what happened next. I joined a dance troupe that was invited to perform at a festival in Morocco. Everything was going great until the night of our performance. The stage steps collapsed under us. People were hurt, and it was a disaster. There were accusations of sabotage, and our troupe was caught in the middle of a political scandal. He looked shocked. I had no idea. I nodded, feeling the weight of those memories. After that, I was lost. I ended up working odd jobs, trying to figure out what to do with my life. That's how I ended up here, washing dishes. But I learned something important through all of that. I learned that sometimes you have to let go of the reins and trust the people around you. You can't do everything alone. Diego was silent for a moment, absorbing my story. Finally, he spoke. Margaret, I had no idea you went through all of that. You're right. I've been trying to do everything myself, and it's tearing me apart. Let us help you, I urged. We can take on more responsibilities. You need to take care of yourself and your marriage. Isabel needs you just as much as this restaurant does. He nodded slowly, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. All right, Margaret. Let's do it. Let's make this work together. As we left his office, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We gathered the staff and explained the new plan. Everyone was eager to pitch in, to support Diego and each other. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were truly a team. Later that day, as the lunch rush began, Diego approached me with a small smile. Thank you, Margaret, for everything. I smiled back, feeling a sense of relief and optimism. We're in this together, Diego, and we'll make it through, one step at a time. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with a united team and a shared determination, we were ready to face whatever challenges came our way. The days following our conversation were filled with a renewed sense of purpose at Bella Vita. With Diego's willingness to delegate and the staff's eagerness to support him, the atmosphere in the restaurant began to shift. It wasn't just about getting through the day anymore. It was about working together to create something better. One of the first changes we made was implementing a new system for handling orders. Previously, everything had been chaotic and disorganized, but with the help of our remaining staff, we created a streamlined process that ensured everyone knew their roles and responsibilities. It made a world of difference. Margaret, can you take a look at this? Lily called from the front, holding up an order slip. I'm not sure about this special request. I walked over and examined the slip. They want the pasta gluten-free. We have gluten-free pasta in the pantry. Just make sure to use a separate pot to avoid cross-contamination. Got it, Lily said with a smile. Thanks, Margaret. The small improvements were adding up, and it showed. The kitchen ran more smoothly, the waitstaff was more efficient, and customers began to notice the difference. One evening, as the dinner rush began to wind down, Diego and I sat down at a table near the bar. The clinking of silverware and the hum of conversation filled the room, a comforting backdrop to our discussion. "Margot, I can't thank you enough for stepping up like you have," Diego said, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. "I don't know where we'd be without you." I smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "It's been a team effort, Diego. Everyone's been amazing, but there's still a lot of work to do." "Absolutely," he agreed. "I've been thinking about some other changes we could make. Maybe updating the menu, adding some new dishes. What do you think?" "I think it's a great idea," I replied. "But let's make sure we involve the whole team in the decision-making process. It'll help everyone feel more invested." "Agreed," Diego said, nodding. "We'll have a staff meeting tomorrow to discuss it." As we talked, Jude walked in, looking somewhat hesitant. He had been fired, but I had suggested to Diego that we give him another chance. Jude was a great bartender, and losing him had been a blow to the team. "Hey, Jude," Diego called out, waving him over. "Got a minute?" Jude approached the table, his expression cautious. "Yeah, what's up?" Diego took a deep breath. "Listen, Jude, I know things got heated the other night. I was under a lot of stress, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. If you're willing, I'd like to offer you your job back." Jude's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? You mean it?" "Yes," Diego said sincerely. "We need you, Jude. But things are going to be different around here. We're all working together to make Bella Vita better. What do you say?" Jude hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "All right. I'm in. Let's do this." With Jude back on board, we continued to make progress. We held a staff meeting the next day, where everyone had a chance to voice their ideas and concerns. It was a productive session, and we came away with a plan to refresh the menu, improve customer service, and create a more positive work environment. As the weeks went by, the changes we implemented began to pay off. Customer satisfaction improved, and we started seeing more regulars returning. The restaurant had a new energy, and it was contagious. One evening, Isabel came in for dinner. She hadn't been around much since things had gotten tense between her and Diego, but tonight she looked hopeful. "Diego, can we talk?" she asked, standing near the entrance. Diego looked up, surprised but pleased to see her. "Of course, Isabel. Let's go to my office." I watched them go, hoping that their conversation would lead to some healing. It was clear that Diego loved his wife, and I wanted to see them find their way back to each other. About an hour later, they emerged, both looking more relaxed. Diego walked over to me, a small smile playing on his lips. "Isabel and I had a good talk," he said. "We're going to work on things, take some time for ourselves." "That's great to hear," I replied, genuinely happy for them. "You both deserve it." "Thanks, Margot," Diego said. "And thank you for everything you've done. I couldn't have turned things around without you." I smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. It's been a team effort, Diego, and we're not done yet. There's still plenty of work to do. "Absolutely," he agreed. "But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we can handle it." As the evening continued, I looked around at the bustling restaurant, the happy customers, and the hard-working staff. Bella Vita was more than just a place to work. It was a family, and together, we were turning the tide, one day at a time. With the team more united than ever, Bella Vita entered a new era of growth and positivity. The restaurant was humming with the energy of a fresh start, and it was evident in every corner. From the kitchen to the dining area, there was a sense of renewal and excitement. We had spent weeks brainstorming and testing new dishes, and the time had finally come to unveil the updated menu. Diego called for a special staff meeting before the restaurant opened to discuss the launch and ensure everyone was on the same page. "All right, everyone," Diego began, standing at the head of the table in the staff room. Today is the day we introduce our new menu. I want to thank all of you for your hard work and dedication. This wouldn't have been possible without each one of you. There were nods and murmurs of agreement around the table. Jude, who had taken the lead on creating new cocktails to complement the menu, looked particularly proud. Let's run through the highlights one more time, Diego continued. Margot, can you start with the new appetizers? I stood up, holding the new menu in my hands. Sure thing. We're introducing a few new starters, including a roasted beet salad with goat cheese and a trio of bruschetta featuring seasonal toppings. We've also added a Moroccan spiced chickpea dish inspired by Margot's time in Morocco. The team listened attentively, excitement evident on their faces. Each new dish had been carefully crafted, tested, and refined, and we were all eager to see how our customers would react. Jude, how about the drinks? Diego prompted. Jude grinned and stood up, holding a cocktail shaker. We've got some fantastic new cocktails to pair with the menu. First up is the Mediterranean Breeze, a gin-based drink with cucumber and mint. Then there's the Spiced Oasis, featuring bourbon, honey, and a hint of Moroccan spices. And of course, we've revamped our classic cocktails to keep them fresh and exciting. As Jude spoke, he poured samples of the drinks for everyone to taste. The team sipped appreciatively, nodding in approval. These are amazing, Jude, Lily said, raising her glass. I think our customers are going to love them. Diego smiled, looking around the room. Let's make tonight a success. Remember, we're not just serving food and drinks. We're creating an experience. Let's show our customers the best of Bella Vita. With a collective cheer, we dispersed to prepare for the evening. The anticipation was palpable as the clock ticked closer to opening time. The first guests arrived just after 6, and the restaurant quickly filled up. The new menu items were a hit, with many customers expressing delight at the fresh flavors and creative presentations. Diego and I moved through the dining area, checking in with diners and ensuring everything was running smoothly. At one point, Diego pulled me aside. Margot, I just wanted to say thank you again. You've been incredible through all of this. I smiled, touched by his gratitude. It's been a team effort, Diego. We've all worked hard to get here. As the evening progressed, Isabel walked in, looking radiant. She made her way to the bar, where Jude greeted her with a warm smile. Isabel, it's good to see you, Jude said, handing her a menu. Can I get you something special tonight? Isabel looked around the bustling restaurant, a proud smile on her face. I'll have a Mediterranean Breeze, please. And I have to say, this place looks amazing. You all have done an incredible job. Jude beamed. Thank you, Isabel. We're all really proud of how far we've come. Diego joined us at the bar, slipping his arm around Isabel's waist. Enjoying the evening? She leaned into him, her eyes sparkling. Absolutely. I'm so proud of you, Diego. And of everyone here. This feels like a new beginning. It is, Diego agreed. For all of us. As the night drew to a close, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Bella Vita had not only survived a challenging period, but had emerged stronger and more vibrant than ever. The restaurant was thriving, and so were the relationships within it. The next morning, Diego gathered the staff for a brief meeting to reflect on the previous night's success. Last night was incredible, he began, his voice filled with pride. We've come a long way, and it's because of each one of you. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. This is just the beginning of what we can achieve together. The room erupted in applause, and I felt a swell of emotion. Bella Vita had become more than just a workplace. It was a family, and we were ready to face the future together. As the meeting concluded, and we prepared for another busy day, I couldn't help but feel excited about the journey ahead. With a renewed sense of purpose and a team that felt like family, there was nothing we couldn't accomplish. Diego walked over to me, a thoughtful expression on his face. Margot, There's one more thing I wanted to talk to you about. I looked at him, curious. What's that? He took a deep breath. I want you to officially take on the role of manager. You've proven time and time again that you're more than capable, and I trust you completely. I was taken aback, but incredibly honored. Diego, I'd be honored. Thank you for believing in me. It's the least I can do, he said with a smile. Here's to new beginnings. We shook hands, sealing the promise of a bright future for Bella Vita. As I looked around at my colleagues, I knew that together, we would continue to build something truly special.